Welcome to the Lensrentals podcast. I'm Ryan Hill, and this week our product development team is going to talk about how we decide what to carry and what not to carry. This is a question we get a lot from customers, and the answer is more complicated than it might seem. The products we choose have to meet a lot of criteria beyond just being good spec-wise. You'll also get to hear about some products we wish we never bought, and some things we'd like to carry but haven't been able to yet. Here are Allie, Josh, and Bryce.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Aycock Patterson, Lensrentals Video Product Development Supervisor, and I'm joined today by Product Page Supervisor Joshua Richardson.
Hey, that's me.
And our Photo and Lighting Product Development Supervisor, Bryce Robbins.
Howdy, folks.
And today we're going to discuss the Lensrentals new product process. Welcome to the podcast, y'all.
Yeah, this should be fun. No one gets to hear about this stuff.
So Lensrentals is committed to fostering a culture of inclusion, and that attitude touches all of our processes in one way or another, and product development is really no exception. So let's talk about where these ideas come from. The bulk of our products are new releases, and Joshua, that's something you probably deal with a little bit more than the rest of us, or at least would like to before NAB got canceled this year. So why don't you start us off on how we determine which new releases we'd like to carry?
Yeah, sure. So probably the most no-brainer of them is just continuing product lines we already have. So we started with probably the 5D, and then now we're up to the 5D4, anything like that where there's a proven product that is having a new one, we're probably going to carry it. Also, we probably all subscribe to too many newsletters at this point.
Absolutely.
So yeah, every time something new is announced, we all see that, and it's a pretty big indicator of stuff we're going to carry. If it's big enough for all of us to get a newsletter about it, it's something we at least want to look into.
Bryce, do you have anything to add to the new releases?
Yeah, famous words of one of our superiors in a meeting was, if it's Sony, we buy it. But in all seriousness, if a major manufacturer releases a new lens, we're probably going to carry it. This past year, we've gotten way better about getting pre-order pages up quickly so that customers can go ahead and reserve those copies, early copies for the rentals when we do get them in-house.
Yeah, and that's a good point because getting those pages up is so imperative to helping us understand what the demand's going to be so that we can accommodate as many of those customers as we can early on. So another major avenue for new products is customer requests. Bryce, I'm going to let you take this one because even in the new product process infancy, you really were dedicated to making sure that the customer voice was heard in a way that was both relevant and revered. So why don't you tell us about some of our early attempts to keep up with those customer requests and how that element of our department has evolved?
Yeah, when we first started this whole process, me and you kind of getting in the development team, I worked with the CSRs to create a Google form, that would populate a spreadsheet that I could then monitor. All these customer emails requests were coming in, and that way I could look at them, bring it to a broader audience, and then when we actually decided to carry it or not carry it, I could communicate that back with the specific customer that was requesting an item.
And it is very exciting when a customer request comes in and it all just kind of comes together and they get to rent the new lens or whatever the same day that it comes in-house. That's always a really big success, I think, to all of us probably. Joshua, do you have anything to add for the customer requests?
Yeah, I think so. I always put a lot of stock in requests that come in through comments on the blog, because those are some of the people who follow us the most closely and usually have pretty good input on that kind of thing. Otherwise, just in the order process, when we're building out larger orders, we have direct contact with customers about how this is going to work for their specific shoot. And that's probably the best way I've had to get input on what we should carry and what we're lacking.
Yeah, absolutely. I frequently, when a customer wants something and it's part of a bigger order, I always tell them to go ahead and place the order because on a long enough timeline, and the longer we do this, the better we get at judging how soon we'll be able to get something added to an order from the time it's purchased. And so I always tell people just go ahead and place the order and put a big note in there that says, don't bill me until you've added this or you'll have this or something to that effect.
Yep, I think it always helps to know who needs something, what they're ordering it with, why they need it, so we can better understand how fast we need to get something in, and maybe if we have other products that might work alternately. So.
And so the third method, and this is usually where some of our craziest and most emboldened pitches for new products come from, they're the employee requests. Because, like you said, we all subscribe to entirely too many newsletters. We're a huge collective of gearheads, and we're all pretty assertive in our opinions. So when we bring our voices together, it can be kind of gratifying. It can also be kind of brutal. So let's talk about some of our best and worst pitches that were employee requests. Joshua, what was something that you pitched that was either quickly shut down or approved and turned out to be a major bust? The product's still sitting on the shelf.
I don't think mine fits either one of those, but I know I was a pretty big supporter of getting drones on the website in the very beginning. That ended up being wildly successful, I feel like, considering we carry about every DJI drone at this point.
Yeah, it was definitely not something we approved quickly, though.
Oh, no, there's a lot of reluctance. I mean, just on a safety, reliability, liability angle, there's a lot to go through. But that one was fun to figure out anyway.
I remember it a little bit differently, but we can go with fun. So some products, I actually have two products. One was approved that is still sitting on the shelf, and that's the Outsight cream source lights. And I really don't understand it at all because they're fantastic lights. And if you're listening to this and you need LEDs, please rent them. I advocated for them for about a year, and they really are awesome lights. I guess the name is just not that remarkable to anyone.
Well, bang for buck and for size, there are a few things we have quite like it. So
It's true.
they're good lights.
Then I think one of the pitches I super advocated for, and y'all were correct probably in refusing to let it go anywhere, was my whole solar power phase. I don't know if Joshua, you are a participant in that, but I know Bryce was. There was a long period of time where I was just dead set that we should have some kind of solar panel power pack.
Should have went to work for Tesla. That was your true calling.
I don't think so. So Bryce, what are some of your worst pitches?
I remember being pretty adamant about us carrying a 1 terabyte SD card when those were first announced. I'm pretty sure an Instagram ad got me there and threw it in. And I'm still trying to get that one through. I have a monthly reminder that's let me look at it and price check it. Once it gets under a certain point there, I think we'll have it. But for some reason, that 1 terabyte SD card always held on to me a little bit. Another one that we were probably about 50-60% ready to move forward on it, and then Kessler announced that they had a like product, so we jumped backwards. Would be our gimbal RC car. We were looking at a couple different versions, models, and we had one in-house and we were messing with it. We ended up deciding that it wasn't going to be an ideal product for us, so we sent it back. And then COVID-19 hit, and we've kind of been in a lull trying to accommodate for that since then. So maybe one day we'll get that gimbal RC car. If that's something that y'all want, shoot us some
If it's up to
requests.
me, yeah, we will have it one day.
Not to
We'll
mention,
figure it out.
COVID-19 really changed the manufacturers as well. You know, when everyone had to go home, it really slowed down production for a lot of things. And so if anyone's listening, just to give you an idea of the varied kinds of products we've taken to these conversations, it really is anything. The gimbal car, I know, is on Bryce's list. I expected to see the underwater drone there, honestly.
Yeah, we tested out the underwater drone. It was just not for us, I think.
Bryce literally went to a lake.
The underwater drone was definitely something that was a little bit disappointing for me. We put some time into it, but ultimately we reached out to the manufacturer and they weren't able to help us with spare parts. So that's pretty much a deal breaker for us. If we've got a product that's got multiple little items that can be removed, and then we reach out to the manufacturer and they're unable to help us sourcing those little items that can be removed, it's kind of just a break for us.
Yeah, we unfortunately have to send a complete product the same way every time, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So those are kind of the ones that didn't work out. Bryce, what's one of your all-time favorite pitched products, and where did it come from?
I'm pretty sure my favorite pitched product that we have would be the probe lens, the Venus Optics 24 millimeter probe lens. I think I first saw it was in that YouTube video probably everyone saw where a guy was shooting a bullet through a book. Again, it was just some special effects with that lens, and a lot of people were really confused about what that lens actually did. But at this point, we have loads of copies of that lens in like 4 different mounts. It's a really fun lens, and it makes for a perfect rental item because not everybody's going to need a 24 millimeter macro lens that's got LEDs built into the front of it. But it's fun definitely to rent and see what you can do with it. We actually got another super macro lens in this week, and my first comment on it was that I was missing my built-in LEDs. So that probe lens has got me spoiled a little bit.
And it's such a weird form factor. I'm surprised it's taken off as well as it has, but that's obviously a testament to what it can do.
Now that it's been out for a little while, there's some amazing content I've seen on the internet that people have done with that probe lens.
Yeah. I mean, I constantly knock it I treat it like it's an SLR magic or something, and then people shoot with phantoms and the probe lens. So obviously I need to take it home and spend a little more time with it. So Joshua, what's one of your all-time favorite pitches?
I really love that at one point we pitched shot bags or sandbags, and we all were just like, no one will ever pay to ship weight to them. And you know what? People do need that occasionally. And it's actually been a very successful product. Never really would have thought that we would ship so many bags of metal pellets out every day.
Yeah.
But people need it.
And we also thought they would rip apart. And
yeah, they've held up very well and people love them.
We had a lot of concerns about that one going in, and reasonably so, because in the past we've tried different ways to make weight shippable from a logistical standpoint, just being a crazy idea. I don't know if you remember this, Joshua, the water weights we used to send out.
Yeah, those are not ideal.
Yeah, they'd come back and they'd be moldy, and we'd have to try and figure out a way to get it cleaned out. And after a few rentals, they smelled disgusting. And shot bags really solved a lot of that for us. So I'm going to go one of my favorite pitches, probably because Ryan, who is a part of our marketing team, was very anti this product, but it's the Blackmagic HyperDeck Pro 2. I was told decks are dead. I was told no one understood their purpose beyond knowing that they were confident that no one would want them. We finally got them, and even I had kind of been talked out of it a little bit. I had some very sincere doubts about whether they'd be successful. And, one by one, they just sort of started renting, and then they started renting in bulk. We actually had to put together a 4-pack to make it easier, and people rent that in bulk. So
turns out when people need one of those, they need about 8 to 16 of them, turns out.
Yeah. And I really didn't want to go with the Studio Mini, the HyperDeck Mini, because I just felt like SSDs were such a more reliable form of media. But as soon as we got those HyperDecks, people started asking for the minis, and now we carry those as well. So I still haven't heard of any failures from it, which is great. But I do think that day is coming.
Don't jinx us.
Now that we have some basic understanding of the origins of these pitches, let's talk about the occasionally tumultuous, completely inelegant process of duking it out in the name of our favorite products. And I am, of course, talking about the Spitballing channel. The Spitballing channel, in short, it's a channel that we've dedicated within the pinging system that we use internally that is just about arguing about a certain product, honestly. Whenever an employee has an idea or a customer submits an idea, or a new release comes out, we post it to this channel, we pin it to make sure that it doesn't get lost. And there is a cap on how many pins that we can use in this channel. So that does kind of put a deadline on us, because once we hit a certain number, we can't pitch any further. And so basically this channel is just a way for us to all be able to see the conversation and participate in it voluntarily. It's not based on any requirements. It's just a matter of whoever sees it and wants to participate can throw in their opinion.
Or ignore it.
Completely. That happens too. It's not always pretty. We've tried to make it better.
You got to be ready you got to prepare for battle before you post your thing. You got to be completely up on it. Put on your gladiatorial armor, step in the arena, and just expect to get pummeled every time. Why do we want this? Why do we need this?
There's always someone smarter than you telling you why we don't need this, and you have to be ready for that.
It's also probably a little disruptive at times to the working environment, but because it is a crucial part of how these products get introduced for conversations, it is something that, like y'all said, I have to be ready to get my feelings hurt, because I take things personally. And when I do the research, it's like, I really want this product for a reason. And sometimes I look back like the solar panels and go, that was crazy. They were right to tell me no. There's no lackluster there. There's no room for a half-hearted pitch.
Well, you're in a group with 70 people and everybody has their opinion about a certain thing. You have to be ready to stand on your toes and defend your opinion. And within an hour, there could be 30 comments in the single thread about the specific item you just pitballed. So
Or within 3 months, there might be none, which is equally frustrating.
Equally disheartening, yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so somebody really wants this, and I don't know what to do to make the noise to make people pay attention. But, once those conversations get started, they've started to move a lot faster, I think, than where we originated. There are certain people, of course, Eric Morrison, shout out to our tech room manager, inspection manager. He pretty much, if he puts his vote on something, we're going to carry it.
It's definitely true. There's a handful of people that if they say this is a great idea, it moves through quickly. And I mean, it's just it comes from a place of when I started doing product pages, there were 2 people, including me, that were helping out with that, and then we added a third, and that's the way it was for a couple of years. But now we're just getting so many more people involved, and I think it's better for it.
We're definitely moving forward in the process. It's loads and leaps better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, it's the culmination of, those new releases, those employee stories we talked about, and the customer voice, which ultimately is so important, kind of finding a place to battle it out.
Absolutely.
Even though the customers don't have to, fortunately. We kind of work as a proxy for them.
Yeah. Educate yourself and go to battle with the customer on your shield.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you've ever requested a new product from Lensrentals and we carried it within a matter of days or a week or so, somebody got in there and got their hands dirty to make a good, solid argument for whatever it was that you were asking us to carry. So we are very committed to finding solutions for our customers. Unfortunately, there are some factors that dictate the feasibility of us carrying a given product. We'd all like to carry drones big enough to carry a red or my dog. Joshua, you have a little bit more involvement in the purchasing conversations than Bryce and I. So could you give us some details on some of the obstacles we factor in when considering carrying products that have either limited vendor options or exist in a permanent state of unreliable availability?
Yeah, sure. Most items start and we kind of look at them as a can we get this? How quickly can we get this? It just happens that a lot of stuff that people do want are either higher priced items that we don't have a firm grasp on how many people actually want it, or products we've never heard of from brands we've never tried. So, I mean, in those cases, we can just list something as special order. That's always an option, pretty good strategy for it. But some stuff is available, but it'll take 2 to 3 weeks to get. Those are also hard. A lot of stuff doesn't have good solutions for it.
Because we can't reliably provide it for a customer, which is kind of the antithesis of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and if we have something on our website, we want it to be available to ship that day in most cases. I mean, I think that's what we strive for. That's really, at the end of the day, what we want whenever we're talking about item availability for our customers.
And, there are also some situations where you have limited vendors. Specifically, Zaxcom is a company that I know we've all kind of expressed interest in seeing what's out there. There's also been a few DMX control panels that I know we've talked about in the past. But, being able to readily get it from one of our normal vendors and get it in quantity and knowing it's going to be here at this time really is a contributing factor for us deciding whether or not it's something that over the product life cycle, it's something that we can manage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the this DMX stuff specifically, a lot of that's being manufactured in Europe. I know a lot of our audio stuff is either manufactured or at least they're headquartered in Australia. Any of that stuff that doesn't have a big name U.S. distributor is just very hard to get, very hard to get information, even talk to people, different time zones, all that kind of stuff if we do run into issues.
Yeah, one of the early days of Insta360, I remember scheduling a tech support call at, I think, 11 p.m. our time. They had agreed to do something early in their time zone. And I mean, it worked out. We figured out the solution. I think it was when we were trying to figure out if the Farsight stuff could be paired in the field or not. But I do not ever want to have to set an alarm at 11 p.m. to wake up and go talk to China. They were very helpful. Shout out to Insta360 for making this work. But the time zone thing really does make a difference. And then, of course, another thing to take into account, Bryce has already mentioned the availability of parts. And I'd like to take a quick moment to give a shout out to both Manfrotto for their amazing online resources. They show exploded views of everything with part numbers and pictures, something that we are trying to work towards. And also Wooden Camera. They make getting parts super easy. But, we're not the average customer. We're not just going to buy one of these and use it personally. We have people using them all over the country, sometimes all over the world. They're getting moved around, they're getting shipped. It's kind of a hard life on gear. And so if we can't get spare parts or we can't get spare parts reliably, it just makes it difficult for us to commit to a product. So Bryce, I'm going to actually send this one to you also because you worked in fulfillment for a little while. As an online rental house, shipping feasibility is always going to have to be something we think about. We have a lot of creative people who are constantly tackling the logistical hurdles, but we just aren't set up to be able to ship just anything. We've definitely started pushing the boundaries lately. I think the Spider Pod and the Axler stands probably came close to maxing us out, as did maybe the innovative carts. But can you talk to us from a fulfillment standpoint about just how it moves through the building and how we get it to a customer?
Yeah, when I first started here, I was actually a fulfillment associate. So I was in packing boxes, cleaning orders. And we've definitely come a long way from those days of using just loose foam. Pretty much everything now has a specific insert and a specific box size that's going to make sure it gets there nice and safe. Some things, we're just unable to kind of jump over the hurdle, things that are too big. That's the name of the game when you're dealing with shipping large, expensive, heavy metal light stands and things like that. And again, sometimes things are just too fragile. We've looked at getting telescopes and more really specific astro stuff, and we're still looking into that. But it's just we have to find something that we think will hold up to our standards throughout the lifetime of its rental.
I mean, even just to rent something that can move all those 30 boxes, which we do have available, but even that's still another heavy piece of something you have to maintain. So really quick, we're going to take a break. Coming up, we will talk about the final yay and nay decisions on new products and how Lensrentals recycles existing gear in response to ever-evolving customer needs. All right, welcome back again. I'm Allie Aycock Patterson, and I'm joined today with Joshua Richardson and Bryce Robbins, and we are discussing the Lensrentals new product process. So we've talked about how a new product pitch enters a forum and the particularities we have to consider before moving forward with the approval or disapproval process, but there are still some finer details worth looking into. So some of the first things we ask ourselves when researching a new product are, does this product solve an existing problem? And do we have a comparable alternative? Since this is a pretty fluid process in general, I'd like to know how each of you, Bryce and Joshua, kind of experience it personally.
Yeah, especially with tests first products. We get a product, be it not enough information from the manufacturer or just a product that we're kind of ignorant to. We'll put it in a special designation for tests first. That way, when it comes in house, it can get to one of Allie or I, so we can put hands on it and figure out if it's something that we actually want to carry and onboard, and then it'll move forward in our system. Getting items created for it and things like that. With that test first designation, we kind of just make sure that it's something we want to carry before we waste any more time with it. Like we kind of discussed earlier with that underwater drone, it seemed like it was going to be a perfect rental item until we reached out to the manufacturer about replacement parts, and they were just unable to source the various removable items from the drone. That kind of killed that product in our eyes.
Another thing about completing a product is sometimes we have to really look at licenses that we want to add. This is particularly important when it comes to some of the higher end camcorders, like the RE Alexa Mini. When we first started carrying that, it was a matter of, do we get the open gate or do we not? With the Venice, it was, do we get that high frame rate or do we stick with the full frame license and the anamorphic license? And so those conversations are also things that sometimes are afterthoughts, but hopefully going into them, a higher end product like that, it is something that we can kind of go ahead and start to feel out how we want to make the product available to people. Joshua, can you kind of talk about that?
Sure. So I think our stance on a lot of the licenses for hiring gear, specifically like the RE stuff you mentioned, I think the Phantom may have a couple too. We play more of a wait and see on those. We're definitely always open to adding any of those at a customer's request. But I think it does make sense a lot of times for us to wait until someone needs that, because a lot of times we can even update just before an order, maybe even on an order if the process works out. So we're always open to adding those things in, but it is usually more of a wait and see, because there's really no need to drop $500, $1,000 on a license that we can just install right when someone needs it.
Some of the things on our product pages, though, especially as it applies to new products, might be a little unusual to people. We've recently started trying to apply very specific verbiage to help kind of dictate when a product will be available. So we have pre-order or pre-listed pages. Joshua, can you kind of explain what all that is?
Yeah, sure. Specifically the one you just mentioned, pre-order, pre-list. We want to get products up as quickly as possible so people can go ahead and reserve those. Our process is always first come, first served for something like that. And, we've had people put in pre-orders for a product 6 months in advance, especially on something like Black Magic that is going to be a year before it actually comes out. So that's basic pre-order. That's just trying to get something up so people can actually reserve it. But we also are trying to make more special order pages, specifically for higher end items that we don't know how many customers might want it or if they want it, but we want them to be able to find those things on our page and know that we're willing to get them for their shoot. Of course, assuming there's enough time to do that for their shoot, but just to let them know we're open to getting these products. So we'll go ahead and throw a page up for those too.
So if a product is here, just to kind of give everyone an idea of how all of this is working now. So product arrives at Lensrentals. Josh was working tirelessly putting together his quirky, funny product pages. And Bryce and I typically work on a little more hands-on vetting a new product. So in addition to determining what to tag, sourcing part numbers, determining what, if any, in-house resources we want to make available. So if you've seen any of those instruction guides or enjoyed one of our how-to tutorial videos on a product page, those conversations start happening pretty much as soon as a product arrives and it's been approved. But onboarding something straightforward like a lens, for instance, takes a lot less effort than onboarding something like the Phantom VO 4K. Fortunately, most of what we carry are lenses. So most of our new products are fairly simple to process in. But then there's the occasional new product that requires days dedicated to researching details. So Bryce, what is a product that you remember being probably more complicated than you expected it to be?
Definitely not that I expected it to be, but one that definitely I'm still dealing with today, and we've had it for probably 2 years now as a rental item, would be the Aycock housings. It's just a really complicated part. There's roughly 40 items on it that are tagged, and those all have to function flawlessly, or else there's a chance you could ruin thousands of dollars instantly as soon as your gear gets into the water.
One for me was the Sony CBK FS7BK. It's the ENG build for
Okay,
the
say that again.
FS7. Yeah, it's the ENG build up for the Sony FS7 or FS7 Mark II. And I remember wanting to crawl into a corner and cry a few times just because we really wanted to get it pushed out. We wanted the product page made. There were things that came with it that probably didn't make a lot of sense. And it's just a lot of pieces.
That's also one in particular that the manufacturer also didn't really know much about it. So
I could not have had any less respect at that moment for the entire process I was dealing with. It was pretty demoralizing. But Joshua, you don't really have quite as much involvement in this, but you did once upon a time. Are there any product nightmares that you'd like to just kind of get out of your system?
Oh yeah, for sure. This could be cathartic. So there are two very specific deep dark pits of product pages that I can remember off the top of my head. One is red hell. Whenever we were designing all the red kits, so I don't know if people really realize how many of those we actually have. For every brain, we have 4 kits. I think gold mount, V mount, EF. PL? Is that how this work on that?
I think it's
No,
for the brains with interchangeable mounts, it's gold mount, V mount, premium, and standard.
that's what it is. So it is for every one of those, and just trying to keep your mind from turning into jello when you're writing 12 to 24 pages that are almost the same, almost the same. And then the other one is anything Tear Deck puts out is always a nightmare every time. Tear Deck hell is another place you don't want to be.
I'm just going to pass on that one because I have my own grievances that aren't worth going into. But since you brought it up, the red premium kits and standard kits, that is another new product concept that I'd like to discuss that doesn't actually usually involve or necessarily involve new products at all, but rather it's just a way that we look at our existing inventory and try to see if there's a better way for us to offer them. One-click solutions is kind of something that goes around a lot when we're talking about them. Joshua, you want to start out with how some of these packages come to be?
Yeah, I think circling back to something we already talked about, customer input is our number one place to go to find how we need to rent things and what people actually want. We can look at customer orders. We have all that information going back forever. We can see how they've rented things together, the most common things people pair together on their rentals, how they're using that, or we can kind of suss out, or we can contact them occasionally. Customers actually are pretty open about how they're using this stuff. So that's one of the big ways we make these packages. Another is a lot of manufacturers have their own packages. So it just kind of makes sense to kind of copy those for our own purposes. The other thing I personally look at when creating packages is specific use cases. I think we're doing a lot of new video packages these days, specifically based around how is the customer going to be using this? Are they doing a talking head style interview? We have a package for that. Are they doing more of a mobile vlog type of work where they're just walking around? We're making packages for that. So I like to look at it as a use case and try and build something that's going to fit that very particular person's shooting style.
So, Bryce, you have an interesting role with package products for this kind of stuff because you actually have to make some of the resources for it, the how-to guides. Can you kind of explain what goes into us figuring out and like what we're trying to accomplish with these guides?
Yeah, we're just trying to make sure, just make it as easy for the customer as possible. So the idea with the quick guides when we initially started was if we gave all this gear to someone, say a kid, they should be able to read this guide and set it up and record what they need to record. So just kind of going on with that, trying to make sure that we give all the relevant information to the customer that they need to set this gear up and make it function. It's a fun role to try to pick and choose what is necessarily required information on a quick guide versus something that is an assumption by me versus an assumption by someone else is different. So we're constantly getting better at it.
Well, all right. Well, so that kind of gives all of our listeners a pretty solid idea of what goes into getting a new product from concept to the storefront to into their hands in a way that is as usable as possible. I want to thank both Joshua and Bryce for spending some time with us today so that we could get this conversation going. And if you're listening, I do want to encourage you, if there's ever any product combination that you're interested in, please let us know. And if there's a new product request, don't think it's ridiculous. Give it a shot. The more details, the better. And we will always consider all reasonable gear requests.
Thanks for listening to the Lensrentals podcast. As always, links to everything we covered here will be in the show notes for the episode. Before we go, if you'd ever like to request that we carry a particular product that's not in our inventory yet, just email us at support@lensrentals.com and we'll be happy to take a look.
The Lensrentals podcast is a production of Lensrentals.com. If you've got a question or topic you'd like covered on the show, email us at podcast@lensrentals.com or leave us a voicemail at 901-609-LENS. That's 901-609-LENS. If you're enjoying the show, please review us on iTunes and subscribe in your podcast app of choice. Make sure to check the show notes for a link to this week's coupon code. And as always, Roger Cicala will leave you with an inspirational quote.